Tonight's guest is going to be Jim Morris. If you're not familiar with Jim, all I can say is really shame on you. Jim is a renowned author, probably, if not the best in the field, in the top best. I think he's the best author in the field. Nick might give him a run for his money, but really, with Jim, it's a couple of things. One, he's put out several books. I think he's 10 now. I'm going to get him to correct me here in a minute. But he always manages to pack every one of these books loaded with different types of information, from ufology to Kenny to a whole realm of stuff in between. And it's just amazing to me, because here I am 10 years trying to write one damn book. So I'm just not even sure how this is going to work. But, Jim, can you hear me okay, man?
Yeah, I can hear you, and I know what you're saying. It's, somebody asked me, what's it like to write one of these books like I do, and I said, have you ever written a term paper? And he said, yeah. And I said, well, think about writing 2,000 term papers all at the same time.
I don't know how you do it, man. I really don't.
Well, yeah, but, I'm really doing a service for my readers, because on my last book, our occulted history, I believe I counted up, I was working out of about 300 sources. That's 300 books and or magazine articles or newspaper articles. So see, I just saved my readers 300 times of sitting and reading something.
Oh, trust me, as a reader, I appreciate it. I get so little free time that it's so nice when people condense stuff that it really just tickles me, man. I gotta be honest. I can't speak, because my wife is a hardcore reader. She reads a book like most people, thumb through a magazine. She's like, okay, where's the next one? Matter of fact, I know we got to go pick up her new Anne Rice one as we speak.
Right.
And I'm
kind of the same way, because I deal with so much. I get real short with some of these works. Okay,
yeah.
Get to the bottom line. What's the bottom line? What's the point here? So I try to stick to the point pretty much. Of course, obviously, sometimes when you're dealing with detailed information, you have to elaborate a little bit. But mostly, I try to say, okay, here's the point. And I think you know this. I also try to give both sides a fair shake.
By the way, you're one of the few authors that can actually say that in any of the fields relating to any of the conspiracies, UFOs, exoteric, whatever the hell, paranormal, whatever you want to call it. You're really probably, there may be 3 of y'all that might actually do that. Everybody else picks a side, and that's what they go with.
Right.
Which I can understand.
That's why I kind of stay off the internet, Facebook, Twitter, MySpace, whatever it is, because all they do is holler back and forth and call each other names. That didn't get anybody anywhere.
It doesn't. We use them for fan pages, for advertisement, for the shows. I don't engage in conversations on Facebook because, frankly, I have a lot of, like this show has, 35,000 fans on Facebook. I think my other show has 40. The station has about 40. Yeah, man, that's all I do. I wouldn't have no life. I'd be, typing. You can't deal with that many people.
Yeah, you can't. But for example, I had a really interesting experience this past weekend. I was in with a very, very hard-nosed conventional scientist, and then another researcher kind of like myself who was pretty conversant with a lot of the more unconventional ideas, and we just had one heck of a discussion. And I finally just had to say, hey, fellas, let me say this. I said, I am so impressed because here's the 3 of us, and I doubt that any of us totally agree with the others. I said, but we've had this really lengthy conversation, and it's never fallen into name-calling or ad hominem attacks or anything else. We are actually intelligently and politely just having a lively discussion. I said, why in the hell can't they do that more in public venues,
Yeah, why can't they?
I don't know. I don't get it, except some people just take a position and come hell or high water, that's what they're going to defend, even though in some cases it's indefensible.
In the future, on some of the other topic matter I know you've written over the years, I have another show called News on the Flip Side. It's not this type of show. It's a current events type show. I'll have to get you on there because pretty soon we're going to be doing the Kennedy conspiracies. We're going to be doing 9/11. Even though it's not a conspiracy show, it really is just your everyday news show with it's News on the Flip Side. It's just basically a news show. Is what it's a 4-hour-long news show with.
Well, excuse me, if you're dealing with the news, you're dealing with conspiracy, right?
Well, yeah, well, that's true too. You made a damn good point. Did it? The news today, I can't even argue that fact. But it's one of the reasons why I did it, because I'll turn on the TV, and I know you've seen it. You'll turn on Fox or CNN or MSNBC, and you basically get one side or the other of someone's talking puppet.
Right.
I mean, it's you're not getting anything real. And I get tired of it, and I don't want to bring it up on this show, so I needed a place to vent. So I made that show.
Speaking of it, you've got to use your head.
Yes,
it's like today I posted a thing on my website. That's jimmars.com, by the way, JIMMARRS.com. I posted a little thing here where a government employee who obviously wants to remain anonymous pointed out that less than 8 hours after they had passed the deadline and said that there was going to be a government shutdown of sorts. Obviously, the whole government didn't shut down, and that's another whole thing. They said, well, 85% of the government's still going. It was just it's 15%, and they said these are non-essential workers. Well, excuse me, if they're non-essential, we're 16 trillion in debt. Let's tell them to go on off and get a real job, right? But anyway, he said less than 8 hours after they declared this government shutdown, they already had very professional signs up at all the memorials and in the parks all over the country, closed to the public because of the government shutdown. Now, it takes time, money, effort to produce signs like that. Okay? Wait a minute. Somebody knew in advance, and you can't do that in 8 hours. You couldn't ship them across the country. You couldn't get them all printed somewhere. Somebody knew well in advance that this is going to happen.
Oh, yeah.
And it's just a contrived thing, we still have money to go bomb people in Afghanistan, but we got to put up barriers and try to keep World War II vets from going to the World War II memorial. Come on, folks. This is a joke. Is just.
Well, I was going to say the week of the shutdown when it was going on, I know they're ending it today, but was it day 3, day 4, we sent $26 billion to the Middle East? I'm like, wait a minute. Excuse me, what the hell is going on here?
Yeah. I mean, I've been to Israel, and I have no hostility towards Israel, but, hey, we need that money over here. Let them take care of themselves.
That's right. Get a job over there in the Middle East.
Exactly.
Supporting y'all people, I'm telling you.
Well, and now to get to it, let's just consider this whole terrorist thing. Oh, I'm getting to where I don't even want to fly anymore. And it's not because of the money crunching of the airlines or the fact that you don't see the pretty stewardesses anymore and they don't bring you free drinks anymore. You can't get any food on the airline anymore. I understand times get tight, but it's the damn security stuff, man. 500 people standing around for 30, 40 minutes trying to get up there so somebody can grope your genitals, or put you in an X-ray or in one of those full body scanners that the scientists have already complained that it uncouples your DNA. Can't be good for you. And if you try to say anything, then they treat you like a terrorist. And I ask you, point blank, how many terrorists have the TSA caught in the 12 years they've been in existence? And the answer is none, zero, niche, nothing, none. Okay, all they've done is hassle the public, and it's all a farce. How can I say that? Well, because here's the thing. If there was a real terrorist threat and we truly had to be worried about a well-funded, secretive terrorist organization like Al-Qaeda that was trying to slip weapons of mass destruction into our country to destroy our freedom and liberty, don't you think that the first thing we should do is secure the border?
I know.
But no, that hadn't happened. And I'll give you another one, Joe. My son-in-law's a pilot, and he's got his own little airplane. His parents live in Del Rio, down on the Mexican border. So he and his wife, my daughter, they fly up and land at a little airport over here. And me and my wife, we drive out to meet them, and they land, and we drive out there on the runway. Maybe there's somebody there, but I've never seen anybody. And he pulls up. I help him tie down his airplane, and we unload their baggage and the atomic bombs and the anthrax or whatever the hell they're carrying. And there's nobody there, no X-ray, no nothing. We just drive off. Now, come on, folks. Get a clue. This is nothing but crowd control, okay? And they're trying to turn our whole freedom-based country into a military police state.
That's what they're trying to do. No, I agree with you because growing up in Louisiana, I don't know if most people aren't familiar with this, but we have seaplanes everywhere here that fly in from South America.
Hey, you can land on any bayou, right?
Yeah, but even that, we actually have airports on the bayous where they land. There's no customs.
No.
They just fly in.
It's only at the big city airports, with the commercial flights. And, I mean, obviously that's not going to stop determined terrorists. All that's doing is just getting the public trained to yes, sir, no, ma'am, going through, stripping down, bending over. It's incredible. And did you ever think about this, Joe? Even the German Nazis at the height of their power in World War II, they didn't have the effrontery to stop German citizens in a public place and make them strip down because those Germans wouldn't have put up with it.
Yeah,
but we do. Are we just idiots or what?
We must be. Well, it's funny. Me and Linda flew into D.C. To go see Stephen at one of the conferences. Actually, I was speaking, and we flew in. I brought my gun with me, okay? Oops. So I bring my gun. I had an easier time getting my gun on the plane than the lady who was following us, just walking around getting her kid on the plane. I'm not kidding y'all. Yeah. I brought my gun up, flipped it open, showed her they had no shells in it, put it back in the case, clipped it, and handed it to them, and walked on the plane. Got up to the TS. I'm pulling pill bottles out of my pockets, dropping them in the basket, taking my shoes and my boots off,
right.
Pulled out a pocket knife, all kind of stuff, dropped in the basket. I go through the thing, I come out, they hand it back to me. Now, the kid behind me, the 5-year-old kid, they brought in strip search. Now, I'm the guy with
I'm laughing, but that's just god-awful. What kind of idiocy have we got going in this country today? And all these idiots can do is fight with each other. It's all the Democrats' fault. No, it's all the Republicans' fault. Right. Come on. It's all you have to do is, well, number one, read my books, listen to Joe Montaldo, and you'll know that the Democrats, Republicans, they're both run by the same wealthy elite. It's the same people. And you ought to be able to see that what's happening right now. They argue about we're going to do this and we're not going to do that, and we're at loggerheads, and yet they're not. They work around. They get exactly what they want. They reach their conciliations.
I have never seen, I've seen some bad regimes in my 50 years of life.
Oh, it's the worst.
But I've never seen one that has pulled the crap that this one has. And this isn't, I know people are going to start writing to me, this isn't about the Democrats and Republicans. Somewhere along the line, these two parties are playing a game, but not with each other. They're playing a game with us.
They're playing the game with us. You got it exactly right. But I'll tell you what, let me simply ask you this. If George W. Bush, and again, don't get me wrong, see, this is where they play the game. If you say something against Bush, then you must be for Obama. If you say something against Obama, then you must be for the Bushes. That's crap, okay? But what I'm saying is that what if George W. Bush had tripled and doubled the national debt? What if he had started bombing several other countries, including Afghanistan, Syria, Lebanon, Libya? What if he'd done all the stuff Obama's done? They would have been all over him, right?
Oh, yeah, they would have been.
So how come Obama, who won't even let us see his school records or his birth certificate, the one he showed is obviously a phony, it's got 23 layers on it, and a good copy of an original document's not going to have any layers on it, okay? So, we don't know anything about him. In fact, he's the one that wants everybody to have a background check if you want to buy a gun. And I say, let's start with him. But no, you can't do that because it's all locked up and classified.
I never understood the background check. I live in Louisiana. When I buy a gun, they do an FBI background check and a state police background check.
Right, they've done it
3 days, give me my gun. So when they said background check, I'm like, well, what are we looking for here? Now, they're already doing, every state does a background check. So
that's right.
I was like, they do a mental health check. So I'm like, what exactly are we going looking for? We're going looking for party affiliations, like when the IRS jumped the Tea Party. I mean, is that what we're going for in our country?
Yeah, that seems to be.
It scares me. I got to say, it scares me, man.
It's the same thing. I've been looking at this Obamacare thing, and of course, the whole thing has turned into a disaster because nobody can get signed up, okay? And the program they've got is lousy. It's not working, and they're supposed to have it working by November the 1st. I don't think they're going to have it working by next year. And so what's that all about? And so I'm looking at it, and I'm thinking, this is not even about medical care. This is about getting all your personal information.
That's what this is about.
They want your bank account numbers. They want your Social Security number. They want all the information that you don't dare give to a stranger.
Well, you see, now you got to prove your income to get it. So now The IRS, remember who is getting this information, ladies and gentlemen. Everything we're talking about goes to the IRS, so they're going to know how much you make, when you made it, where you've been going, what you're spending it on. You just allow the government to learn every intimate detail of your life, and you just allow the IRS to have complete control over your health records. Yeah,
exactly. And it's just like the IRS in general, First off, at the very basics, the whole income tax thing violates the Fifth Amendment.
It does.
We remember all the old mafia chieftains that get in front of Congress and go, well, I declined to answer on the grounds it may tend to incriminate me. I claim my Fifth Amendment rights, which states under the Constitution, the law of the land, that you cannot be compelled to give evidence against yourself. And yet we are compelled by threat of jail or fine to fill out that 1040 form and hand it in, and if the government doesn't like it, that's what they use to prosecute you in the tax court, right?
That's what they do.
A clear violation of the Fifth Amendment. And yet nobody wants to talk about that.
Well, because I don't know what happened. First off, the Supreme Court scares me a little bit because I can't figure out how they figure it was constitutional to tell us we had to buy something from the government. That just doesn't even seem even remotely legal or constitutional, but somehow they managed to sneak that in. And then it just seems to be, in the last 5 years, it just seems to be one thing after another. We're losing rights, we're killing people, people are disappearing, stuff's going on, and nothing seems to change. And all I ever see on stuff, if I happen to turn on HBO or MSNBC, I hear stuff like, Obama's the greatest president we've ever had. And I'm like, really? Apparently we're not looking at the same president. But then I want to turn on Fox. Of course, he's the most evil bastard to ever live, which he's probably somewhere in the middle. I mean, he's right. As presidents go, he's not a very bright one, or he's not a very strong one. Might be a better way of saying it. But, what are you going to do with this guy?
What's his accomplishments? Nothing.
Nothing. But, I made a point.
They said he got a Nobel Peace Prize because he wanted world peace, hadn't done anything, but he was for world peace. Well, wait a minute. How about you, Joe? You want world peace, don't you?
Yeah, I want a Nobel Peace Prize.
Okay, how about giving you a Nobel Peace Prize?
I'm still pissed because they didn't give the little Muslim girl a Peace Prize this year.
I know. There's plenty of other deserving people who actually did something for world peace.
I lost all respect for the Nobel Peace Prize. I mean, literally. I mean, dude, I'm like, this guy's the president over 2 wars. He's killed more people with drones in the last than Bush did in his whole 8 years.
Including Americans,
and we give him the Peace Prize.
I know. See, we're insane. We're just insane. Except, wait a minute, maybe it's not insane. Maybe, just maybe, that is proof that there is a conspiracy going on to plug this non-entity in as President of the United States for the sole purpose of wrecking the United States. And if that's his purpose, he's really doing a good job.
I got to say, though, I was glad to see, it looked like he was giving Egypt to the Muslim Brotherhood. But
of course, and what about Syria? On September the 17th, he waived the federal law prohibiting American companies from sending arms to groups that are known terrorists, okay? He waives that so that he can arm the Syrian rebels, half of whom are al-Qaeda, supposedly our worst enemy. Come on, people, wake up.
Well, we've been beating him up so bad, we got to give him some more. Oh, well, come on. I mean, Bin Laden was CIA trained. He worked for us for, 14 years in Afghanistan. And y'all really think this man turned on us, right? This guy worked for the CIA.
He was doing exactly what he was ordered to do. In fact, I spoke with Ted Gunderson, a former FBI. I think he's passed away now, but I spoke with him. He was actually at the meeting in the 80s when they brought Bin Laden over here under the name Tim Osman, and they groomed him, and they funded him, and they armed him, and they sent him back to go into Afghanistan and form the Mujahideen, to fight the communists over there. So they've been on the CIA and government payroll for years and years and years. Why do we think that they suddenly jumped the range,
Well, I figured what happened was when the Cold War ended, we needed an enemy because we got to be able to keep spending money and keep building.
Exactly.
Right? So we said, hey, look, dude, you know what? We're just going to turn you into this, and we're not going to actually kill you. No, you just, And somebody the other day said, well, they killed him, and I love this, by the way. Lady writes to me, she said, well, they killed him in Afghanistan. We know that's a fact. I said, really? Prove it to me. She said, well, just
nobody knows that.
Well, wait a minute. I said, you want me to take the media's word? I said, let me see. They won't release the pictures. They dumped his body. They don't. I said, where did they get the DNA to match his DNA in the first place? I said, did y'all ever think about it? They said they had his DNA on file and they were matching. I said, did you ever ask where they get the DNA from? Did anybody ever bother asking? I said, we didn't do that 30 years ago when he was in our country. I said, so did you ever ask where it came from? Oh, no.
Well, they probably got it from the same place that they got the hijackers' paper passport that they found on the streets of New York on 9/11. You know, the buildings, the planes, the hijackers, 3,000 Americans, they all just burned up. But this passport is still lying there, you know. God, can you spell planted evidence? And by the way, Osama bin Laden died before, at the end of 2001. He was dead by 2002. And that's just not some conspiracy theory. The former Secretary of State under Clinton has said that. So has CIA people. In fact, Bhutto in Pakistan, she said that in an interview just 2 weeks before she got killed. I think that was part of the reason, because she was blabbing the truth that Osama bin Laden had been dead for years.
Well, I know a couple of the CIA agents said when they used that daisy cutter in that cave that day, this is right after we had started doing this, as they said he got killed then.
Right.
But nobody knows. I mean, the guy had 40 guys that look at him. The other day I'm listening to the French president talk about, oh, no, bin Laden's alive. He's living with 2 of his wives in France. I'm like, really? What the hell's going on?
You know, Joe, that would not surprise me, because here, think about it. How are they going to get somebody like Saddam Hussein or Osama bin Laden? How are they going to get them to go along with their plans when they're setting them up to be, you know, the big terrorists, the big boogaboo, if they know all that's going to happen is they're going to get killed? No, like you said, they all got lookalikes. Plus, it's easy enough. You know, we do have a thing in this country called the Federal Witness Protection Program. So we all know the government has the capability of taking somebody, altering their appearance, giving them new identification, sending them off somewhere else, and they got a whole new life. Who's to think that they're not doing the same thing? I suspect that Kenneth Lay and Timothy McVeigh are over in Tahiti sitting on the beach sipping, you know, Mai Tais.
Maybe. See, that's the thing. You know, there's stuff that goes on inside our government that just things, and especially now, things just don't add up. I still haven't got past Benghazi when we're talking about the IRS scandal. And now all of a sudden they find out, you know, just recently that people were giving information to the White House from the IRS, which we know is illegal. Somebody's got to go to jail for. And then boom, all of a sudden the government shuts down. We're not talking about that at all anymore.
Well, and who's been punished for any of this stuff?
Nobody yet.
Who's been punished for the financial collapse of 2008? Who's been punished for the people that lost their homes over bogus mortgages and the derivative field that has just ripped off millions of dollars from people? No, nobody's ever gone to jail except Bertie Manhoff, and that was simply because he was ripping off the rip-off artist.
Yeah, they were. Oh, Donna, it's jimmorris.com. If for any reason you can't find it, all you do is click his picture on UFO on the cover. It'll take you right to his home site. Also, if you click any of the book titles next to his picture, it will take you to his page where all of his books are listed. That way, if you want to buy one, you can click it right there. It's all real simple, real easy. But it is jimmorris.com, guys. I mean, it's pretty damn easy.
Well, speaking of, let me get in an unabashed commercial plug here.
Oh, yeah. Get it.
My book, Crossfire, and I've been very gratified. That came out in the late 80s. It was about the Kennedy assassination, of course. In fact, the subhead is the plot that killed Kennedy. And I roam and scounge through secondhand bookstores all the time, and you know, I hardly ever see a copy. That means everybody that's bought one has held on to it. And I'm gratified because even after almost 25 years now, nothing I wrote in Crossfire has been proven to be wrong. There's some stuff, few things out of date, a few typos, but nothing serious. And so the plug is, I've got a new edition out, and it's still the same title, Crossfire, The Plot that Killed Kennedy, but it's up to date. It brings us up through the Oliver Stone movie, the Assassination Records Review Board, and all of the information they've uncovered, all of the latest information, and I trimmed down some of the other stuff that was just a little bit out of date or that, you know, was kind of questionable. And plus, it's got a name and subject index in it that is worth the price of admission, because when you go back here and you start looking through the index and you find stuff like the Dallas district attorney says there's a big conspiracy before changing his tune within the same day, or the fact that they announced they had his fingerprints on the gun, but only after the funeral home director said the FBI had come into the funeral home and put his dead hand on the gun, and that he had trouble getting the fingerprint ink off his dead hand in time for burying Oswald. And the fact that all the electricity and the phone service went out in the Texas School Book Depository just as Kennedy's motorcade arrived, and then came back on a few minutes later, At the same thing happened in Washington, by the way. All the phone systems went down, right about the time of the shooting. And they said, well, it was people calling in, Well, let me tell you something, folks. I was there. Soon my roommate came in, I was in college on a degree plan for journalism. My roommate ran in. It was about 12:45. The assassination happened at 12:35. So this was like less than 10 minutes after the shooting. And we turned on the TV, and they were already announcing that something had happened in the motorcade. It was after 1. It was about 20 minutes later that Walter Cronkite announced that Kennedy was dead. Okay, well, now, all the phones went out in Washington, like within minutes of the shooting, and they said that was because of everybody calling to find out what had happened. What I'm trying to tell you is that just as you could imagine, most people didn't realize, even the people at the scene didn't realize what had happened for 5-10 minutes, and and then the word began to spread, and people began to holler and scream. Things happen, There's something going on, and of course, then you've got Fletcher Prouty, who said he had been sent off from the Pentagon to Christchurch, New Zealand, and he was down there, and all of a sudden they're running a whole rundown on Oswald at a time when the Dallas police weren't even sure who they had in custody. And that's the same thing that happened with, in 1977, there was some FBI documents released that showed that less than 2 hours after the shooting, J. Edgar Hoover, FBI director, had called Robert Kennedy, Kennedy's brother and Attorney General, and told him that we have our man in Dallas. It's Lee Harvey Oswald. He's an ex-Marine. He tried to defect to Russia, pro-communist. He is, quote, a mean-spirited individual in the category of a nut. So Hoover's got it all worked out. And yet at this time, Oswald had just arrived at the police station in Dallas, and he's got 2 sets of identification on him. One says he's Lee Harvey Oswald, but the other says he's Alex James Hidell. And the cops are saying, okay, which one are you? And he said, well, you're the cops, figure it out. He's being uncooperative. And yet when the local people didn't even know for sure who they had in custody, J. Edgar Hoover's got a complete rundown on him, knows exactly who he was, and he's a lone nut assassin. That, folks, come on. That is maybe circumstantial evidence, but circumstantial evidence may be the best, because you can plant a fingerprint, you can plant the gun, you cannot change the circumstances.
There was just that whole case. No one's ever been able to convince me that it was Lee. There was just too many people there.
Well, the last official word of the federal government was the House Select Committee on Assassinations back about 1980. And they concluded, based on a lot of evidence, including 2 sets of acoustical scientists who said that at least one shot came from the grassy knoll, and therefore it's probably a conspiracy. Yeah. But then typical politicians, they said, gee, we're out of money, we're out of time, so the guy on the knoll probably missed, and it's still Lee Harvey Oswald with 3 shots from the depository. Now, Joe, here's the whole deal. Here's how it works. If you believe the government and trust the government, then you believe and trust the evidence that they present, in which case there is a pretty solid case against Oswald. But if you don't trust the government, and then you start looking at this evidence, just like the fingerprints that I just mentioned, you find that their evidence falls away, and it's nothing like what they said.
Yeah,
and there was a conspiracy, and the reason we don't know about it is because, well, as John J. McCloy, one of the members of the Warren Commission, said, the thing is we have to prove to the world that the United States is not just another banana republic where the government can be changed through an act of violence, And the sad truth is we are just another banana republic. This was a coup d'etat.
That's what that was. That's exactly what happened there. You know, I watched. This must have been 20 years ago. There was a show on where they had brought in some sniper experts from the Marines and the SEALs and the Army, and I had set this shot up for them. Most of them ended up either hitting the guy, the Secret Service guy that was behind the car, like in the top of his shoulder, or it hit on the angle of the trunk and ricocheted upwards. No one completed a direct shot on the dummy, and these guys are expert shots.
That's right.
He said between the moving car and the way the crowd was moving forward, it made the shot not impossible, but virtually impossible.
It's virtually impossible, and yet we're told that Oswald, with a World War II vintage, bad, crappy rifle, was able to hit 2 out of 3 shots at a moving target, but with a tree intervening in his line of sight and moving downhill and laterally away from him. Now, it just can't happen. But, you know, here's another example of how they flim-flam us. A lot of people go, oh, wait a minute, though, the government said Oswald was a marksman. Okay, well, wait a minute. I was in the Army. There are 3 categories in the military. There's marksman, sharpshooter, and expert. I know because I'm from Texas. I fired expert on the firing range and got me a weekend pass to New York.
Yes.
So marksman is the lowest of the categories, and Oswald made marksman by only 2 points. And that was on his last firing range test. On his first one, he didn't even qualify because he couldn't even hit the target, much less qualify as a marksman.
That's important because in the military, even in the Navy, if you don't qualify as marksman, you fail your boot camp, you're out. You're gone.
Yeah.
And then you're home. You have to qualify that. I got all 3 of my badges, but I'm also a coon-ass from Louisiana that's been shooting since
you know about shooting, don't you?
That's right. I mean, I got my first shotgun. I was 6 years old, so I mean, it's not a big deal for me. But for a lot of these guys, it was tough. And for just everyday people, it's not an easy task, guys.
Can't do it.
I think, if I remember right, in the Navy, the marksman was 20 for 20 at 50 yards. It might have been at 25 yards. I'm not sure. That's not even a long-range shot.
No. The marksman, you can hit it. Yeah, I think 25, and it goes to 50, and it goes to 75, something like that.
Yeah.
That's pretty funny, too. When I went in the Army, this would have been about, 1969, I think. My training class, the recruits I was with, we were the first basic class to get the M16 rifle. Everybody before us had the M14, and of course before that the old M1. And so we get this M16. We were calling it the Mattel gun. You know, it was like a little toy. It was all plastic and it's pretty light and everything. And I'm fiddling with it, and they're showing us how to break it down and disassemble it. And I said, wait a minute, what's this thing right here? And they said, oh, that's the ejector handle. You know, I said, what's that? And they said, well, when it jams, you hit this thing and it'll unjam. Well, I said, wait a minute. You're sending me into combat with a gun that you're already telling me is going to jam?
Oh, yeah, they were famous for jamming, too, man. Piece of crap. I like the M14, by the way. I trained with it when I was in the Navy.
M14 is a good weapon. I still like the M1, though.
Yeah, I love the M1. Well, I like the M1 carbine, too. That was really nice.
Oh, yeah. The only thing about the M1 I don't like is when you're out of ammo, it goes ping! It tips off everybody within 50 yards.
I think my second time I ever qualified was with an M1 rifle. It was a bolt action. And, man, you had to qualify. You know, you had to shoot these rounds in less than 25 seconds. So using a bolt action is work, man.
I know.
I like it.
Speaking of, Joe, here's the thing. I have spoken, maybe there were about 300 people maybe in Dealey Plaza the day Kenny was shot, and I bet I've interviewed more than 100 of them, including the former Speaker of the House, Jim Wright, and also Senator Ralph Yarborough, who's riding next to Lyndon Johnson, Nellie Connolly. I've talked to all, and a lot of people that were in the crowd. I've interviewed all these people, and they all say the same thing. They said there was one shot and a pause, and then 2 shots right on top of each other, kind of a bam, 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 okay? Well, now, okay, Joe, you were just telling me you've trained and you've shot bolt-action rifles, and I ask you point blank, can you get a bam-bam with a bolt-action rifle?
Not a bam-bam, because it's basically,
you can't do it.
It's up, back, out, back,
you got to cock the bolt. You got to
right.
regain your sight picture. You just can't do it.
If you're an expert, you might do it in under a second, but that's not.
But you can't aim. There's no time to aim at anything.
You got to have that gun locked in place, and you pull back. You're talking a second or two. You're not going to get bang, bang. Bang, bang is coming from an automatic. That's just bottom line.
That's right. And even John Connolly, if you go check his testimony to the Warren Commission, he said that he heard the first shot, so it didn't hit him, even though the Warren Commission said it did, because you don't hear the bullet that gets you because it's a supersonic missile.
Yeah,
it hits you before the sound does. Okay, so he heard a shot. He knew he'd been hunting recently. He knew it was a shot. He said he was turning to his right. He couldn't get a good view of Kennedy, so he was kind of turning back towards his left when he was hit the back. Something punched him in the back. He didn't hear it, okay, but that was the bullet that struck him. Then he falls over into his wife's lap, and he said then he heard several shots and remembered thinking that somebody was using an automatic rifle. Well, according to the version of the Warren Commission, there was only one shot after he was hit. So you don't hear one shot and think that it's an automatic rifle. So that should tell any reasonable person right there that there were multiple shots fired.
And something else I noticed when you see the front of Kennedy's head, the bullet looks like it's moving upward, not downward. So if you were shooting from the, what was it, 2-story, 3-story building?
Six stories.
6-story. All right, so you're
That'd
shooting
be 60 feet in the air.
So there's no way that bullet's coming back up. It's going straight through and it's going downward on an angle.
Exactly.
But when you see Kennedy's head, of course, the bullet, necessarily, oh, wait, hit the bone and deflected. Maybe if it was a pistol, rifle ain't doing that. That's too big of a caliber. That's too big of a gun. That bullet, especially if it's like 240 grain or 180 grain, it's only going one direction. It's not ricocheting anywhere. It's busting anything that gets in its way.
That's right.
So,
and hey, you'll understand this too. The Warren Commission and the House Select Committee on Assassinations and the American Medical Association that issued their little cover-up piece of report, but they all said that Kennedy was killed by a slug from a high-velocity rifle. The Mannlicher Caracano that they said belonged to Oswald is not a high-velocity rifle.
No, it's not.
So, hey, right there is a little factoid that kind of throws their whole idea that he did it into a cocked hat.
I'm not even sure. When I first seen the gun, I'm not even sure if it had the capacity to reach the range that we were talking about here and still be accurate. It's not that, a rifle bullet won't travel a few hundred yards.
Well, wait a minute. Okay, listen, I'll even give him that it would have been accurate. I don't think so either. And I think also, you got to understand he's probably using old World War II ammo. That powder might have gotten old. And, I mean, there's just all kinds of variables there. But to give them all due consideration, we'll assume that the rifle was decent enough and had enough bang to reach the target and do the job. Okay, here's the problem. According to the Army Ballistic Test Center, they told the Warren Commission that to make that rifle accurate enough to test, they had to put 3 metal shims under the telescopic sight because it was misaligned. So now we're told he does this incredible feat of shooting with a misaligned scope. That's impossible. That doesn't work.
That's got to be lucky as the best shot ever, man. I mean,
I know.
That's incredible. But that stuff always cracks me up. But what bothers me more than any of that is the just overall amount of sheeples in this country. It's like Americans have forgot how to think for themselves.
Exactly.
It's either the internet or the TV, one or the other.
Right.
But they're preoccupied. And today, and I catch myself in this, by the way. Like I was telling you earlier before we got on the air, my business is doing good. The station's starting to make a little profit. iCar's really busy. I got all my family stuff going on. I have zero free time. Zero. So half the time I don't know what's going on because I'm too busy. If I honestly didn't have interns and friends and co-hosts like Stephanie, I wouldn't know what was going on half the damn time.
Well, Joe, you're not any different than anybody else. That's part of what's going on in this whole country. Years and years ago, father would go off to work and come home tired, and mother would be taking care of the home, and then they'd have supper and have family time, and then they'd go to bed and go on. Today, mother has to work. Father comes home, he's worked all day. Mother's worked all day. The kids have been in daycare or school or running loose, and they all have takeout and they watch TV and they go to bed. Nobody knows anything. And I'll tell you something. I feel bad about the public out there that just totally unaware, but then I also understand they don't have time or the expertise or the background to try to cull through all this stuff. My biggest gripe is with my own profession. I studied to be a journalist, okay? There are no more journals. There's only corporate advertising distribution systems. And there's no real reporting done anymore. They just repeat the government pronouncements. And the very thing you're talking about, where's the critical thinking, I can understand where a lot of people in the public, they're too busy trying to live their life and make a living and keep their head above economic water. But what about the news media? Isn't that what they're paid to do, to find out what's really going on and tell us? They are totally falling down on the job. And it's not just the Kennedy assassination. I can come right on up, all the way up through 9/11, all the way up to what's happening right now, all the way up to the Benghazi fiasco. They're not telling everybody what really happened.
It's really sad now, because the government, at least the three major networks, all seem to be just liberal now. This is what really scares me. You've got ABC, NBC, and CBS, and now the Washington Post and New York Times, which are all very CNN, which are all hardcore liberal. Well, let's be honest, ladies and gentlemen. Democrats are only 40% of the politics in the United States, and only 20% of them are actually liberal. So why is almost all the news liberal? I mean, the majority of the country. Just the other day, AP put out a new poll, by the way, that shows that 60% of Americans are moderates. They're in the middle. They're not Republicans. They're not liberals, and they're not conservatives. They're in the middle. So,
but you wouldn't know that by listening to the TV network.
Oh no, no.
But by the way, let me counter you just a little bit there, Joe. They're only. I hear what you're saying, and you're absolutely right, because you watch those major networks, CNN, and it's always anti-gun, pro same-sex marriage, blah blah blah. And they all sound real liberal, but I maintain they're only as liberal as their conservative corporate masters allow them to be. You hear stuff like that, social liberalism, but you don't hear about corporate malfeasance, or you don't hear the bad stuff about the Federal Reserve System or corporate America. They don't talk about that. So I maintain they're only as liberal as their corporate conservative masters allow them to be.
That's a good point, because you don't ever hear anything about corporate, anything other than what's his name, with the pyramid scheme. You don't hear about anything.
Yeah, Bernie Madoff, and like I said, they only got it jumped him because he was ripping off the rip-off artist.
I know, and he had been doing it for 30 years or so.
Yeah. Well, he didn't cut in the right person on his profits,
Yeah, he should have been checking into that a little better. But hey, it's good to see them get bit in the butt every once in a while. Because it's like
yeah, but else. Hey, he's not the only one that needs to have a little jail time.
Oh no, well, probably half of corporate America should be in jail.
Oh yeah,
at least half of corporate America should be in jail.
I think most. I'm all for extended terms for Congress, I'd say 15 to 20 years ought to be about right.
That's right. 15 to 20 years would be good for most of Congress. I never did understand that every other office we have, there's term limitations, but the House and the Senate, there's no term limitation. It's never made any sense to me. It's just building.
Well, and the same thing for the Supreme Court. That's why we have some real problems there.
The Supreme Court is a joke.
You got these guys in their dotage. And or you get somebody in there and they pack it with conservatives or they pack it with liberals, and then they, instead of following common sense in the Constitution, they just follow their party philosophy. No, they ought to have term limits too. Put them in there for maybe more than a congressman. Put them in there for 8 years, say, and then out. Put somebody else in there.
I still want to see the argument on how the Supreme Court came to say that Obamacare was constitutional. I have seen a dozen reporters ask.
But it wasn't a tax. It wasn't a tax. Oh, wait a minute. Yes, they ruled it was a tax. Yeah. But it's still not a tax. God, come on.
It's constitutional. How can you the car insurance was bad enough, okay?
Yeah.
But yeah. I can see where they skated on that, saying it was a privilege, even though I still think that's a load of crap. But when it came to this, I'm kind of like, guys, it's our life. If we want to live and die, or die of cancer or heart attack, it's our freaking business. It got nothing to do with the government.
You know what? Hey, here's what I think. You realize that shortly after, I can't remember now, it might have been right before or it might have been right after Obama took over, the government took over General Motors, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so I see no difference in Obamacare than if they had said, okay, you want a brand new Chevrolet this year? And everybody goes, no. And they said, well, you're going to buy one anyway, and we're going to take the money out of your bank account and out of your tax refunds.
Yeah,
now, if they do that, wouldn't everybody be raising hell? But they come up with Obamacare, and everybody's going, oh, good, we're getting free medical treatment. No, ain't gonna happen.
There are going to be so many lawsuits against the IRS and so many scandals with the IRS over this, so them having control over this. What happens? But
they don't care. They're getting ready to still martial law. When you start trying to say, I'm not going to do this, I'm taking it to court, I'm taking it to the streets, they're going to say, uh-oh, martial law, stay in your home.
Well, I heard this gentleman the other day, he's back about 10 or 15 years on his taxes with the government. And he said, so now when I buy my Obamacare water, they're going to come after me for my back taxes, right? He said, well, if they do that, then that's illegal. That means they've looked into my private records to adjust my Obamacare. He said, how does that work? He said, they have no business looking at my tax records to give me health insurance. He said, so if it comes up together and they drag me in the court, he said, then I can sue the crap out of the government. I said, well, I don't know if I'd count on that, buddy.
I said, that ain't going to work. Besides that, they are not looking into his records. When he signs up for Obamacare, he's giving it to them.
That's what I'm saying. I mean, you know, it's a mess, and I don't know how any real judge could have said this was legal. I just don't even understand how they could do it.
Well, all right, here it is in a nutshell. Right off the bat, when Obama came up with Obamacare, and most thinking people were saying we need single payer. You know, in other words, the government or the insurance, somebody, just one person collects the money, pays it out for your health insurance, and get rid of all these middlemen that are running up the huge cost increased in medical care. But Obama said, no, single payer is off the table, okay? They weren't even going to consider that. Now, let's look at what they do with health care, say, in England, okay? If you fly to England and you're an American citizen and you trip getting off the airplane, you break your leg, they take you to the hospital, they set your leg, give you good medical coverage, take care of you, and they don't charge you a dime because it comes out of their health insurance plan, their national health insurance plan. Now, the people in England, they pay something like the order of maybe $30, $40 a month to be part of that health care thing. Well, you know, of course, that's millions and millions of dollars, and everybody's not down claiming it. So, and it seems to work pretty good. So you pay $30 a month, and you go through the rest of your life, and you're paying into the health care plan because it goes right to the government. The government pays the hospital, the doctors, whatever. That's single payer. That's the way it works. Should be pretty good. But over here, you have to pay the insurance companies. The insurance companies are in the middle, and of course they're so rich and powerful that they can manipulate the Congress and Obama, and he says right off the bat, no single payer. You know, you've got to handle the insurance companies, and so all the middlemen are still there, and all they're doing is tweaking it, and plus gathering all the information on everybody so they can force you into the insurance company plans. It's ridiculous.
It's ridiculous.
Insane.
I did like this little reporter I seen the other day from the Washington Post. She's going to probably get canned over this, but she is doing an investigation on all the Democrats that voted for Obamacare to see how many of them were taking money from the insurance companies. So far, 31 of them she's found were taking money from the insurance companies.
Of course.
So, I mean, right there.
Hey, that's the same thing. I saw a study the other day by one of those watchdog groups that the senators who are all for attacking Syria, they are the ones who are the most prolific, led by John McCain. They're the ones taking the most money from the defense contractors. So it's just, you know, we have the best Congress that money can buy.
You right about that, boy. That was very well spoken there. It is the best Congress money can buy. That even scares me more.
I know, but you know, in the long run, if we can just figure out what's going on and who's paying all the money, then maybe we could begin to exert some control over everything, because these corporations that are now running the government, and by the way, I might mention that the dictionary definition of fascism is the blending of state and corporate power. Well, I asked you, isn't that what we have? In fact, the term fascism comes from Benito Mussolini, the World War II dictator in Italy, and his black-shirted fascistas, okay? And Mussolini himself said that fascism really isn't the correct term. He said the more correct term is corporatism. Well, I ask you, isn't that what we got going here right now? Yeah. But again, that may not be that bad, because if you figure out which corporations, what they're doing, get some truthful information. If there was a really free, unfettered news media, then you could figure out, for example, what corporations are selling soft drinks full of aspartame, which can make you sick, give you cancer, destroy your immunization system, and then you just quit buying it. And the corporations always respond to the bottom line. If everybody quit buying aspartame products, they'd quit making them. Okay, but as long as they can cut down on the surplus population and tell you these diet drinks are good for you, they're going to keep producing it.
Well, that's a good point, because somebody wrote to me the other day on the other show about Miley Cyrus. I said, well, just quit buying her CDs. Don't let your kids go to her videos. Don't let them go to concerts. And it's over and done with. I mean, it's simple. We got to take a break right quick, but we're too busy being cool today. That's how Obama got elected, remember?
Right.
You seen that survey when they went through all the colleges and why did you vote for Obama, and they said he was cool? Really?
Yeah.
I mean, that's why somebody developed the term young and dumb.
Well, it was reverse racism, okay? It was, hey, he's a black man, so let's vote for him. And, of course, if you'd said, well, he's a white man, let's vote for him, then they'd be all over you, right?
Yeah. Well, I get my black friends hell about it all the time. I'm like, are you happy in the second term? Oh, shut up, Joe.
Yeah.
Anyway, we got to run right quick. Ladies and gentlemen, I'll be right back. I just want everyone to please stay tuned to UFO Undercover. I'm speaking with Jim Mars, and I'll see you in 10. Okay, back. I hope y'all enjoyed the first hour of the show. It was great. It zipped by at like warp speed. I was amazed to see how fast it went by there. I was like, damn. We only had Jim for an hour, but he agreed to stay with us a couple more minutes because we want to talk a little bit more about the books and what he's got coming. And I had noticed, welcome back, by the way, Jim. Sorry about that. I got all
I'm just hanging around here.
I wanted to ask you, because I noticed, was it yesterday or the day before, I was on Amazon, and the Crossfire book actually had a release date of the 17th. But is that true, or has it already been released?
It's already been released.
Okay.
I think what they do on that is they try to give a date when they know it'll be available in the stores.
Oh, okay.
And apparently they ship a little bit early, a few days early. So as far as I know, the new Crossfire, and this is, by the way, I'm styling this as everything you need to know about the Kennedy assassination. You read this one book, and you really shouldn't, of course, the more thoughtful people will, but if you simply want to know what really happened to Kennedy and know it, not just listen to somebody with their theory, you want to get the facts, hear what everybody at the scene said, to hear what Oswald said in his defense, hear what his mother and his wife said, get all of the straight information so you can make up your own mind as to the truth of what happened, then I say get Crossfire. And by the way, this was, of course, the book that was a basis for the Oliver Stone movie, JFK, that caused so much hoorah.
Yeah, well, it was a good movie. Well, it's a good book. Now, Donna had wrote in, I had forgot about this book. Donna wrote in at the break and said her favorite book you ever wrote was The Sisterhood of the Rose.
That's wild, because I didn't think anybody had read that. I gotta like that one too. Sisterhood of the Rose, that's still available. It's what I call faction, a work of faction, which is fact-based fiction. I met this woman who claimed she had this remembrance of a past life, and her story was so interesting that I decided that somebody needed to hear that. But but that was just what she said, so that's just kind of who knows if it's true or not. But I went back and I've blended it in with actual World War II history, and what we've got is Sisterhood of the Rose. It's about a secret society of women during World War II that helped win the war for the Allies. And amazingly enough, it even included Hitler's wife, Ava Braun, and Clara Petacci, who was the mistress to Benito Mussolini, and then a whole raft of other women, both well-known and unknown, and how that they maneuvered around and won the war. But I think the basic storyline is how that they were trying to beat the Germans and the Nazis to recovering Solomon's treasure in the Pyrenees Mountains of southern France. And that part, there's a lot of evidence and facts to back that up. It's a fascinating story, and it really had never been told, so I thought I'd tell it in a book, and it's The Sisterhood of the Rose.
That one, I'm going to have to get that one. I had ordered our occult history the other day because I didn't have it in my collection. I didn't know about the Rose one. I thought I know
it came out from a separate publisher.
Well, maybe that's
but they did a really good job with it. It's a beautiful book. It really looks neat. Yeah, and one of these days we'll need to do a show and talk about our occulted history. That's actually my newest one out, and that one is really fascinating because what I've done is take and connect to, here the four thought unconnected topics, and one is the growing interest in the subject of ancient aliens, thanks primarily to that TV series.
Yeah.
But there's also more and more information coming to light that shows that the argument for extraterrestrial intervention in the history of the Earth thousands of years ago is really quite compelling, if not overwhelming. So then I connected that with the other topic that I'm sure you're quite familiar with, which is, a small handful of people trying to run the world. You can call it the New World Order, you can call it the 1%, the Illuminati, whatever you want to call it, but it's quite obvious. In fact, in the book, I point out the scientific studies and the economic studies that have been done that proves that about less than 20 banks actually are running the entire economy of the world. And then they have interlocking ownerships and directorships. So actually it's a small handful of people that are trying to run the world. So my working hypothesis was, can they be connected to this issue of the ancient astronauts? And surprisingly enough, yes, they can.
Yes, they can. I bought the new copy. I see, man. It's a good price in this book, ladies and gentlemen. I had ordered the one we were just talking about, Our Occult History, a few days ago. But I'm actually ordering while I'm talking to Jim. I'm ordering the one about the road, the history of the roads. I'm actually ordering. I've never read it, and I try to keep all. Katrina was rough on me, so I'm trying to get all my books back up to where they were pre-Katrina, because we lost 480 books during Katrina.
My goodness.
There's a hell of a collection that went away to Dodo Bird. And what happened was, because it took us 3 days to get back into the city, it wasn't that they actually got wet, but the moisture in the house the books just soaked it up like a sponge.
Did they shrivel up?
They swole up, and then they just like melted. So there was no saving them at all. I was just kind of like, that was depressing. But still, a lot of...
I can imagine. You wouldn't believe how many books I have. I had a whole another house, and we were thinking about moving, and we decided we couldn't afford to move all those books, so we just built another house on the same property. So I just walked off and left them there, and now the new house is filling up with books. So I can imagine how you felt after losing all your collection.
And Linda's a big time reader. She loves to read, and that's another thing I'm real lucky with. When I'm in a hurry or I'm really busy, I'll give her a book, say, baby, read this, summarize it for me. And she'll read out the book and go through it and make sure I hit all the key points, which is really nice sometimes, I got to say, because she reads like warp speed. She really does, but it's good. But I'm looking forward to Our Occulted History, because I really want to do it. When I was reading the description of the book, it really sounds fascinating, I have to say. It sounds like it's got a lot of good information.
Oh, I've gotten a lot of favorable comment on that, because it like so many of mine, it goes into some topics and areas that most people don't get a chance to even hear about,
Well, Ancient Aliens is always going to be a fascination for me, because it's one of the things I do. But any type of conspiracies, dealing with our government and how things may or may not be running is always interesting. Because, people tell me, oh, well, it's the Masons, it's the Bloombergs, it's the Illuminati, it's this, that, and the other, which may be true. But the problem here is, ladies and gentlemen, you have 5 major groups that you hear people talk about. Do you think they all get along and all agree? Really? You could say the Illuminati ran all the world, but do you think the Masons are going to let the Illuminati run anything? You think the Illuminati is going to let the Skull and Bones run everything? Do you really?
What if at the very center they're all run by the same folks?
Well, see, that's what I'm thinking. I'm really thinking they're all run together.
Yeah, and see the bottom question of our occulted history is when you stop and consider what this 1%, Illuminati, New World Order, whatever you want to call them, you consider what they're doing, poisoning our food, poisoning our water, poisoning the air, causing economic strife, causing political strife, religious strife, then I think it's time that we're going to have to seriously ask the question, are they even us?
Yeah, I know. Well, that's a good question. You see, that's a tough question. Are they us? You know, we've heard stories that ancients have been here a long time on the planet. So I mean, they may have been the core of our society since it started. Hell, they may have started it for that matter.
Well, that's what they say.
Yeah, I'm not.
There's
really...
ancient writings that claim that, but let me quickly make a point here because I don't want anybody getting misunderstanding here. I always hear people saying, "Are you trying to say that we were created by aliens?" And no. In fact, the ancient Sumerian tablets, they even make it clear that these Anunnaki, that translate those who came down from the skies, from the heavens and landed on the earth, they themselves said, well, we can't create anything, only God can create, which is, to me, really interesting, which means they, too, understand that there is a universal creative force, a God, if you will. But all they did was improve the breed, okay? Just like we do with cattle and horses and dogs and cats. You know, they improved the breed. They took Neanderthal, and after they got through tweaking with the DNA, they produced Cro-Magnon, modern man. And so, no, nobody created us, but they did tweak us pretty good, okay?
And that would explain a lot of the flaws in our DNA there. You know,
Exactly.
I've heard DNA specialists say stuff like, with the over 4,000 pieces of junk DNA and the obvious flaws in human DNA, which you don't find in any other animals on the planet except for Dolly the sheep. In case y'all know, Dolly sheep, you know, forced evolution was a clone. That's what they compare humans to. They're saying that humans had forced evolution, like there was added things to us. They really think all this
taken out, yeah.
things
and
taken
you know
out.
what I think was added to us was the telomerase caps on the end of our DNA. See, you know, science will tell you that every cell in your body is rejuvenated every 7 years. In other words, 7 years ago, if you're over 7 years old, 7 years ago, not one cell in your body was there 7 years ago. It's always been duplicated and replicated. Okay, so theoretically, there's no reason that if the cells continue to replicate themselves, that we shouldn't be able to live for, I don't know, hundreds, thousands of years maybe. Okay, but we've got these caps on the end of the DNA strand, and after a certain period of time, it tells the cells it quits, it stops the replication of the cells. And your cells then oxidize and they age and you die, okay? Well, wait a minute, how does caps get on there, you know, and why? And again, I think that's one of the most obvious signs of somebody tampering with our DNA. Of course, the thing is, if we were going to take up species and we were going to kind of tweak with its DNA so that they kind of look like us and they could think and they could do stuff with their hands and be creative, we certainly wouldn't want them to live as long as we did because they might turn out to be competitors, right?
Yeah. Well, yeah, it's true. Well, you know, it's funny, too, Jim. Just recently, you know, all my evolution friends are always writing to me when they hear me talking about aliens and stuff. Just recently, all my poor evolutionist friends just got biatch slapped because Brazil, come to find out that the people who live in South America and Brazil and all, guess what? They didn't come from the land bridge. They were here before the land bridge, 30,000 years before the land bridge, people. Yeah, so something's not adding up here. They're all, now everybody.
Well, it's the same thing. I just had a good friend of mine that came back from Bosnia and confirmed for me the account of the Bosnian pyramid. Now, if you go to Google and Google up the Bosnian pyramid, you're going to find a whole page of qualified experts who tell you, oh, no, it's just a hill. It's just a pyramidal-shaped hill. Nothing there, folks, you know. And yet my friend was over there, and I have talked to Dr. Sam Osmanovich, who is running a free archaeological dig over there, and he's got people coming from all over the world. My friend just got back, and she said she went down there and was in the tunnels in this pyramid and went in the chambers inside this natural hill. And that it's a pyramid, and it's larger than the Great Pyramid on the plains of Giza. And yet, man, they are denying this, and hiding it away. They don't want anybody talking about that. And this thing is much older than the pyramid on the Giza Plateau, apparently.
But that's a good point, Jim, because, you know, we know about the sunken city off the coast of Cuba. They say it dates back 10,000 years. We know
thing off the coast of Japan.
Yeah, and then we know about the tsunami that showed us the two cities in India that date back 12,000 years. So we're kind of like, well, wait, y'all told us Sumerians or Egyptians, because they go back and forth, were the first civilized people. Oh, wait a minute, you off by at least 6,000 years, people. Come on.
Well, this is pretty amazing. I heard this argument, and I wasn't sure because I like to think I can trust the experts, but I'm beginning to realize you can't, which is the age of the Great Pyramid in Egypt. But a couple of years ago, I went to Egypt, and sure enough, on the Great Pyramid, and certainly very obvious on the Sphinx, is obvious deep vertical water erosion. Both those things sat out under very heavy rains, and it created these deep grooves, on the side of the pyramid and the side of the Sphinx. Well, the geologists will tell you there hasn't been any significant rainfall on the Giza Plateau for 10,500 years, which means that the Sphinx and the Great Pyramid were built more than 10,000 years ago. Well, that leaves out the Egyptians. They weren't there at that time. But of course, the geologists confirm this, but the Egyptologists say, oh, no, the dating's all wrong, blah, 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 because they have such a vested interest in this bogus history that they've taught us.
Well, and see, what's nice about that is we know now the only time that the Sphinx lines up with Leo is at 10,500 BC.
Exactly, which, by the way, seems to pretty much coincide with probably about the time of Noah's flood, the Great Flood.
Well, there were several. I think we've counted now 7 major things. Let's see, the Easter Islands line up with the Seven Sisters at 12,500 years ago. Angkor Wat lines up with Draco at 12,500 years ago. I forgot the ones that the Stonehenge lines up with, but they all line up at the same date. So if they were built 6,000 years after the fact, okay, then someone had a really good understanding of precession to line these up with stars from 6,000 years. You might be able to do it without a computer. I'm not buying it, but you might be able to. But all these different societies don't. I'm not buying that no matter what. So whatever it was, this is a significant date in time. We know that there's Indian cities that date back this long now. This is a significant time in human history, but for some reason, no one wants to talk about it. No one. No one wants to talk about that these monuments all point back to this date, and now we find cities that are this old. No one seems to want to, no archaeologists. And then there's another oddball thing that we stumbled across by accident that a doctor's writing a paper on. South America and Central America, 99% of everyone who lives there is O blood. 99%, both Central and South. That's just weird. That shouldn't even exist. We put all the maps and all the data up on the website so everybody can look at from the 3 doctors that worked on this. But we did it as a blood type study for abduction cases to see if they were preferring a type of blood. But we found out by accident that all of South America and Central America are 99%. Oh, well, that pretty much rules out the land bridge. It actually looks like it look like that O started in South America and A and B started in either Africa or Europe. South America is where O started, and the other 2 started somewhere else. Would make sense. I have no idea, Jim. And now with this new museum putting out this stuff saying that it's 40,000 years of evolution in America, man, that drastically changes, the out of Africa theory, the 2-parent theory. It changes a lot of stuff.
Well, that's the whole thing. I think the only thing we can say for sure is that we don't know anything for sure.
I agree with that. I know. But I'm not going to let you get out of here because you was already supposed to be going. But
yeah.
Jim, you're always a fantastic guest. And anytime you want to come talk or you want to do politics, and like I said, we have news on the flip side now where we go tear stuff up all the time. This show you're always welcome on. Ladies and gentlemen, remember, jimmars.com. It's real easy. If I were y'all, if you're interested in JFK, I would really go get this book. I actually seen the CD. It was really good, so you should really, if you can get it, get it. Like I told Jim, I just ordered his new book because I'm dying to read it. So as soon as I get through reading it, I'll give him a call and get him back on to go through it because ancient aliens is one of my favorite topics, Jim. I just love that topic.
Yeah, it's wild.
And having we have like 18,000 abductees in ICAR now. We got like 42,000 members worldwide. And it really, I've been learning a lot. And see, like with you, it's like research by proxy. All I have to do is pick up the book and read it. I don't have to sit there like you. Well, no, it's like when you were mentioning going through 300 sources to do it.
Yeah, well, that's true. And the thing is, too, is I don't have an agenda, okay?
You don't.
I'm not a Republican. I'm not a Democrat. I'm not a liberal. I'm not a conservative. I'm just middle road guy. I just simply want to know the truth about things, And so I think you can go back and you can see all of my books, all the 4 New York Times bestsellers. and you're going to find that maybe a typo or maybe some little minor something here, some little argument here or there, but nobody has ever successfully said I've said anything that wasn't true. So I think hopefully I've built up some credibility now, so when you read one of my books, you know you're getting the straight truth.
Well, I'm going to have to get you on to one night to talk about 911. I try to stay away from 911 for the most part.
Yeah, but it don't stay away from you. Everything that's going on right now is a direct relationship to 9/11.
Well, I would really, because I'm not going to do it tonight, but I would really like to pick your mind about, you know.
I can tell you everything, but let me leave you, your audience with something to think about.
Okay.
We all know that on 9/11, 19 crazed Muslim hijackers using little box cutters took over 4 airliners and crashed them into buildings, and one of them crashed in a field, right? We all know that, right? Well, wait a minute. How do we know that? Well, because we were told that by the media, who was told that by the government. And how does the government know that? Well, because actually when you boil it all down with almost exclusively, all that came from Barbara Olson, the CNN reporter whose husband was Ted Olson, the Solicitor General of the United States, appointed to that position by George W. Bush. Okay, and he said his wife called him 2-3 times on her cell phone and told her that they were being hijacked and that they were using little bitty box cutters and herding the flight crew and the passengers to the rear of the airplane, yada, yada, yada. So that's how we know what happened on 9/11. Oops, except it was then pointed out that in 2001, you couldn't make a cell phone call from a high-flying aircraft. So Ted Olson changed his story and said, well, she must have called on the telephone on the back of the airphone, on the back of the seat. Well, oops, then they checked and found out that the flight she was on, the aircraft, did not have back of the seat earphones. So we got to wonder what the heck she was calling on. And then in 2006, the FBI in the Zachariah, Missouri trial brought in all of the phone call records for 9/11, and lo and behold, they said there was only one phone call attempted by Barbara Olson, and it was, quote, unconnected, end quote. In other words, there was no phone call from Barbara Olson. So everything we think we know about 9/11, we don't even know that.
That shit. And see, I didn't know about the cell phone.
No, they won't tell you that stuff.
I didn't know about that. See, but that's what I'm saying. I mean, I'm going to get you on and pick your mind through all this because there's a lot of good material here. And
oh, yeah.
It's a subject matter that I could use a little education on anyway. You know, and like I said, I get to cheat when I have you on.
There you go. Pick my brain. Well, I'm getting jammed up here because the 50th anniversary of the Kennedy assassination is coming up. But hey, Joe, just give me a holler maybe sometime after November, and we'll just do this again.
Oh yeah, I will. I'll get in touch with you sometime, you know, later in the year, or maybe the early part of next year, if someone slows down a little bit. But yeah, I'd love to pick your mind, Jim. And I got to say thanks again, man, for joining us tonight. I had a great time. Ladies and gentlemen, in a minute we're gonna switch topics here on as Jim's leaving, but we will talk a little bit, maybe a little bit alien agenda, maybe a little blood type stuff. Okay, but I'm gonna take a quick break, right quick, and I'll be right back. So please stay tuned.